What's going on, guys? Meekachii here, and I haven't done a wrap-up in a hot minute. Is that what the kids say nowadays? Hot minute? In a hot minute?
A dank minute.
A dank, God.
They say dank now.
No.
That's the new thing, the dank minute.
I hate that word. Anyway, a dank to me sounds bad. Like,
Well,
it sounds like it would be a bad word.
What about, yo, this is bad?
Or sick.
Or sick. That's the thing, right? You just say, like, pretty much you're gonna go, yo, you dead.
You dead. Well, they do that.
Yeah,
What do they say? Yes, they do. I'm dead.
Really?
Like, I'm dead means, like, it's awesome. Or what does Jeffree Star say all the time? Deceased.
Oh, wow.
Like, yeah. So, yeah, I guess it does mean good stuff. Anyway, don't mind the bookshelf in the back. We are actually next going to be filming a, like, organization video. I've never done one of those before, so I apologize in advance. Yeah, I haven't done one of these since January, so I have quite a few books to talk about. I'm probably going to go in reverse order, so books I've read most recently to older books, just because that's how I pulled them off of the shelf, and I don't feel like reorganizing them, so yeah. Then we'll talk a little bit about what I'm reading at the end currently, what I plan on reading in, what month? It's June. Okay. I'm overwhelmed already. Let's go. So the most recent book that I finished was The Mermaid by Christina Henry. I actually really enjoyed this. When I was reading it, I wasn't sure what I was going to rate it, but I ended up really, really liking it. I give it a solid 4. I think it does deserve slightly over a 4, but not really a 5. Essentially, it's about a mermaid, a real mermaid in our kind of world, but back in like the late 1800s, when did Barnum live? Late 1800s?
I don't know. You look at me like I'm a Barnum specialist.
I think it's the late 1800s, and she comes onto land, falls in love. Well, she probably does that in the mid 1800s. She comes on land, falls in love with a man who accepts her for what she is, and there's kind of this myth going around that she's a real mermaid, but her village that she lives in is very protective of her identity and her secrecy. So fast forward years when Barnum finds out that there might be a real mermaid living in the world. He sends his apprentice out to go fetch her, essentially, and get her to show up in his show. Blah, 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 blah. The story is kind of about her self-discovery and her being in the show, how she gets in and out of situations. I really enjoyed it because she's a very strong character. She does not fit in the world that existed in the 1800s or early 1900s. Kind of just explains how she thinks the world is a messed up place, and it really was back then if you think about it, but she's a more modern thinking mermaid, and I don't know, it was a really cute story. In the end, I really enjoyed it. Yeah. So before that, I say after that, but before that technically, I picked up Ace of Shades by Amanda Foody. This one, I feel, is a little overhyped. I gave it a 3 out of 5. Essentially, I'm kind of getting sick of stories, and this book kind of put me in a YA slump, because I'm kind of getting sick of stories where 17-year-olds essentially, like, rule the world. Like, 17-year-olds have a band of people who are highly respected in the community, and they're just super, like, awesome and cool, and I just, it's not realistic, and I don't know. I'm okay with 17-year-olds being in a little group in their city and being cool for what they are, but to be highly respected by adults and to be super respected by the city as a whole is just getting on my nerves a little bit. I feel like Six of Crows and Crooked Kingdom kind of did that, but better. So I feel like this was just trying to be a Six of Crows type setting. Even though the story was completely different, I feel like the setting and the city and the setup was kind of trying to be like that, and I don't think it did it as well. So that kind of annoyed me throughout the story. The characters, I didn't really love the characters. The story was okay. I got through it pretty well. I mean, I just didn't really care about any of the characters and what happened, and it just kind of bored me a little bit in the middle. The ending was kind of interesting, and it kind of sucks because it makes me want to know what's going to happen next, but at the same time, I guess I liked it enough to continue on later. I don't know. Let me guys know what you think of this. let me guys. Let me know what you guys thought of this down below if you think I'm being just mean or stupid about it. I read Kings of the Wild by Nicholas Eames, I think you say it. I super loved this book. I'm really excited because there's going to be another one coming out in August. But essentially, the author takes the concept of bands and touring and puts it into like an old world perspective where you have groups of mercenaries, they call themselves bands, and they kind of go town to town touring and they pick up jobs slaying monsters and doing things like that and making money. So they take that new age concept of bands and touring and put it into like an old world perspective. It was so much fun because you have a group of like 5 older characters who used to have like one of the most famous bands there were. Does that make sense?
I don't know. I didn't read it.
No, I mean my English. Anyway, so you have a oh my god. So you have a group of 5 characters who used to be in a really famous band back in their day. They were really well known, had lots of gigs, blah blah blah. Time happens, things happen, the band breaks up, and they go on their separate ways. Something happens to one of their daughters, and Gabriel, I think his name was, Gabriel's daughter, and he goes back to one of his bandmates, Clay, and tries to bring the band back together again. So you have essentially a bunch of old guys trying to get back together, form this band in a world where bands aren't necessarily even the same that they used to be. And I just love cranky old people. It's like they're my favorite characters ever. So you have cranky old people, you have really good writing, you have an interesting world, an interesting story, and you have just awesome characters and funny parts. And I just loved every second of this book, and that's all I could say. 5 stars. Then I read The Boy, the Bird, and the Coffin Maker by Matilda Woods. I randomly tried to get this through a giveaway from Goodreads and I won, so that's how I got this. I ended up really enjoying it. It's a middle grade novel, but it was like really refreshing. I feel like it was a really well done middle grade novel. It's essentially about a lonely old man, my favorite characters, and a lonely boy, and kind of their stories separately and how they get brought together, and kind of, I don't want to spoil stuff, but they also, there's some magical like elements to this story as well. I just felt it was really well done and it was a really cute story. So I think I gave this 4.5 out of 5. I picked up Time Bomb by Joelle Charbonneau. On Goodreads, I gave this a 3, but I think I might decrease my rating to a 2 after sitting on it for a little while. Essentially, it's about a group of kids who, for some reason, even though school hasn't started yet, they end up in the same school on an off-school day. Like, I think it's like late summer, and they're about to start school. And bombs start going off, and these kids get stuck in the school, and then they find out that the bomber might still be in there with them. And you're kind of like learning how these characters are building separately, but then forming bonds, and people that normally wouldn't talk with each other and be together end up having to help each other out. The premise was really good, except one, I'm really, really bad at guessing things in stories, and I guessed who the bomber was within like the first couple of chapters. So that was kind of a letdown because I don't know. But essentially, there are 6 characters that you kind of follow. I think it's 6 main characters, and of course, for some reason, even though all these people end up in the school, they all have a motive to bomb the school. I'm gonna just come out and say that, like, if you took my school, like, in high school and brought 6 random people in there, they wouldn't all have a motive to blow up the school. But that's how this worked. 6 random people, they all happen to have a motive, and they all happen to be in the school. You're in this situation where you have to guess which one did it, but I don't think it was done very well. There's a lot of forced diversity in this. Now, don't get me wrong, I am all about diversity in books, but I like it when it's done well. Like, you just have a character and they are diverse, and that's all you have to say about it. Like, you don't have to harp on the fact that this one's Muslim and this one's half black and this one's this and this one's that. Like, you have to tell me 50 times that you're giving us diverse characters. I get it. It's awesome. Can we move on? Like, I just don't like when diversity is over harped upon, and like, I get it. I also find it kind of silly that the 6 characters that end up being in this school randomly are all vastly different from one another, culturally and just every other way imaginable. It's just not realistic. So I like the fact that the author tried to be diverse. I feel like even if she had just had this diverse group of characters but didn't keep harping on the fact that they were that diverse, I would have been okay with it. And I would have been like, oh, random chance that all these people are there together. But it was too much. It was just way over the top. And yeah. And I guessed the killer, like, really quickly. So I don't have much else to say about it. I gave it technically a 3. I think I'm going to change my rating. It wasn't that good. I ended up picking up Red Rising by Pierce Brown. I forgot to mention that we do a monthly book club, and Time Bomb and Ace of Shades were both part of the book club. This was also part of the book club. We all vote every month what book we want to read next. This was one of the months. I don't remember which month, but I feel like in the book club, everyone was kind of disappointed by it. I feel like this book has a lot of hype surrounding it right now because the newest one just came out. They're kind of like expanding on the trilogy and making it a series, which is cool, but I did not know that this was essentially like a Hunger Games-esque story. It's not technically literally like the Hunger Games, but the world reminds me a lot of Hunger Games. The last 75% of the book reminds me a lot of Hunger Games. I kept thinking, like, when is this Hunger Games stuff going to end? Oh, it doesn't end until the very end of the book. And I didn't know that, like, basically there was this trial for these students to go through, and they were gonna, like, literally the whole book was like that trial. And because I didn't know that, I feel like it dropped my rating a bit. If I had known it ahead of time and known that this was going to happen, like, I probably would have enjoyed it better. Essentially, it's about a man who grew up in this really low section of society, and his whole life he thought he was just building up Mars so that Mars could be habitable, and that he was helping do that. Come to find out that his whole life had been a lie, and he gets thrown into this type of game scenario. I just didn't overly love it. I don't know. I gave it a 3 because the writing was really good. The characters were good, but I feel like Hunger Games, I don't know which one came out first. This may have come out before Hunger Games, but I feel like it's overdone, and I just don't care about it anymore. So I don't even know if I'm going to continue on with this series. And the ending was supposed to have this big crazy epic ending, and I didn't even think it was that crazy. So correct me if I'm wrong. I know it's a very beloved book. So then for the book club, we picked up Obsidian, the 3rd book in the Illuminae files. I can't tell you much about this book because it literally just, each book just builds on each other, and I love this series. This was no exception. This book, I gave it a 5 out of 5. I literally would find myself laughing in one page and 2 pages later, bawling my eyes out. It was just very emotional, very character-driven, a great story, and a great ending, and I know that Amy and Jay are working on another book together, and I just can't wait for it because they're just geniuses together. You guys have to read this series. 5 out of 5. The book that I read right before Obsidian was Lifelike by Jay Kristoff. We'll have to post a picture for you because I don't have a physical copy. It has since come out, and I'm so upset because I love the Nevernight series, the 2 books that are out right now. I love this series, and I just really did not like Lifelike. I'm so sad to say that because I love Jay Kristoff's writing and I just like his stories, but I hated the characters. I did not care about any of the characters. The story wasn't that good. It wasn't that fleshed out. I didn't really like the world. I didn't like hardly anything about this book. I think I did give it a 2 out of 5. I don't even know how to describe the story. I really don't. It's about a Lifelike is an android type character with very human-like
Lifelike? Would you
lifelike,
say lifelike?
yeah, very
Characteristics?
human-like characteristics and their way of thinking, and they kind of like have the ability to like grow mentally, and I just didn't find it that good. I don't know. The fake words that he kept coming up with, there was so much fake like
Jargon.
I don't even know. Like, it was just like swears, like just fake words all over the place, a lot of like slang in their world. It was just terrible. I can't recommend this book to people, and I love Jay Kristoff's writing, and I'm really upset by it. I cannot see myself continuing on with it. I didn't even buy this one because I didn't like it. I got sent an e-arc copy of it, so I technically own an ebook copy of it, but I won't waste my money on the physical book because it's just boo. So I picked up the first 2 books in the Lunar Chronicles series. The first one being Cinder, the second one Scarlet by Marissa Meyer. I really enjoyed these books. I think I gave the first one a 4 out of 5, and I gave this one a 3 out of 5. She basically takes like the fairy tales that we know and puts them in this kind of futuristic, very technologically advanced world. Cinder is kind of like did they call her an android? She's not an android.
She's a lifelike.
She's a cyborg. So she is a human, but got badly injured and kind of like given robot parts to survive. Going into this, I really didn't know what to expect. I didn't think I was going to like it because it just didn't sound very good to me, but the author does a really good job, and I like her writing, and I just like the flow of this story. I like the characters. So I'm really enjoying it. This one I enjoyed a little less. I didn't care for this character as much as I did Cinder and what was going on. But really, even though you do have a new character in this, there is a lot of Cinder still, and the story just really flows and continues on. So you do have to read Cinder first before going on to the second one. I have not picked up the third one yet, but I do plan on picking it up soon because I am really enjoying this series. Let me know if you guys like it. I know it's been around for a while. So also for the book club, we picked up Children of Blood and Bone by Tomi Adeyemi, and I know a lot of people are reading this right now and have been the last few months. I gave this one a 4.5 out of 5. I feel like the writing was beautiful, the world was good, the magic system was okay. But the way it was written, even though there was a lot going on, you didn't feel overwhelmed, and the characters were really well created and developed, and it's basically about, you're following a few different people, but there's this one girl that lives in a village, and her mother gets taken away because of her magic. But this opportunity kind of arises where she can bring magic back to the world, and she goes on this adventure to do so. You're also kind of looking through the eyes of the princess of this world, who, you know, it's a pretty big deal, and she's also on her own kind of journey. I don't want to give too much away because I feel like you piece the story together pretty well and easily as a reader, and I don't want to give too much away because then it's just going to ruin it for you. But it's essentially, they're on this quest to bring magic back to the land because it has been gone for a long time. And pretty much everyone that had magical abilities was killed. I really enjoyed it. I do think it's a solid YA title. It's written far better than a lot of the YA titles I've been reading lately. So if you're looking for a great fantasy adventure story, this one's pretty good. I picked up To Kill a Kingdom by Alexandra Christo. This one is also out now, even though I have an ARC copy of it. I gave this a 3 out of 5. I didn't overly love it. Some of the issues I had with it was the main character is essentially a mermaid. I don't even think they call them mermaids. They call them something, but she's a mermaid, essentially, and she's supposed to be really evil and really bad, and they have to keep telling you how bad and evil she is, but she's really not that evil or that bad. So at no point in the story did I fully believe that she was this evil of a character, which is a huge turnoff for me. Like, if you're gonna make an evil, mean, bad character, make them actually evil, mean, and bad. Like, if your character's going to have this moral, like, inner conflict with themselves, like, bring that up from the beginning that might occur. I think I would have liked this book better if in the beginning they had stated, oh, I'm supposed to be this really bad character, but like it's expected of me, but I can't. Like, I would have been okay with the story, but the fact that in the beginning that she's this like bad character and she just really was never that bad just irked me, and like it just stuck with me throughout the story and I couldn't get over it. The story itself was okay. It wasn't that fantastic, and I don't know what else to say about it. Essentially, she's supposed to be collecting hearts of, men, which is kind of like, what sirens do. And she gets essentially caught, brought onto land. Her mother gets mad at her, turns her into a human. It has a lot of like Little Mermaid aspects, but it's really not a Little Mermaid retelling. I don't know. I didn't really like any of the characters. I didn't like her as a character, especially because she was supposed to be awesome and wasn't. And I just didn't really like this. Let me know what you guys think. If you liked it, if you've read it. Because this book gets a lot of hype and people seem to really like it. But it just fell really short for me. I picked up The Traitors Game by Jennifer Nielsen. I asked for an ARC copy of this. I was actually really excited about it. And I hated this book. This is my one-star book in this video. I did not like anything about it. I honestly can't even tell you what went on with the story because I don't remember because I didn't like it so much. I remember hating all the characters. The story itself was bad. The romance type stuff was so awkward and weird and just unrealistic. The story itself was too coincidental. Like, a lot of stories have a lot of coincidence in them. But this was way too coincidental. Like, everything that happened. It's like, it just made you roll your eyes. I know some people that have read this since, and I want to know what people think about this. Like, if I'm just way out of left field and just, like, wrong. Like, let me know if you guys liked this book. Another thing that really bothered me was that there would be, like, really complicated things that they had to figure out, and they figured them out like that, and it's like, what? Like, how would you know that? How would you figure that out? Nothing about this book was done well. And the fact that I thought that this was like a debut book, that's how poorly it was written in my opinion. And apparently this author has a ton of books. So there's no excuse. Like, you're either not growing as an author or you just like make stories and worlds that I hate. Like, I have no desire to pick up another book by this author, which is really sad, and I don't mean to author bash, but this book just was terrible. Let me know what you think. Just because I get an arc of something does not mean I'm gonna give it a good review. Just saying. I picked up City of Brass by S.A. Chakraborty. This was actually one of our book club picks as well. This book is deceptively big. It doesn't look that big, but it's over 500 pages. I really, really liked this book. I gave it a 4.5 out of 5, and I'm not sure why I took off half a point. Because I thought I gave it a 5 stars, but I guess not. But I highly recommend this book if you like adventurous, like, fantasy stories, adult fantasy. It's definitely an adult fantasy. It is a very dense read in the beginning, like, getting to know the world, some of the terms, the characters. I found myself, there's a glossary in the back, and I found myself referring to that, like, at least for the first 50 to 100 pages. Like, I was in the back of the glossary, like, reading about it. I feel like I have a better grasp on it now, so when the second book comes out, I won't have to do that anymore. But it was just very well written. The characters were fantastic. The story was great. The world was great. Like, this is how you do a fantasy. And it's set in... Where is it set? Cairo. So you actually learn a lot about different cultures and things like that. So it is a diverse book, but they do it well. They do it in a very great way where you're not like having to shove down the reader's throat that you're giving them diversity. Even though you're in a different type of setting than you usually are used to in books like this, I feel like it was done extremely well. Everything about this book was great. Essentially, you have this main character. Her name is Nahari. She's, I think, originally in Cairo. And she speaks this language that she doesn't know anyone else that can speak this language. You learn this very early on into the story. But but she also has a knack for languages. So she can hear a language and immediately understand it, and she can speak languages that she didn't know previously. So she just has this knack for languages, and she gets involved in this ritual of sorts and ends up speaking something that she doesn't really know what she's saying, and she summons essentially a djinn, or like a genie type character. And it brings her into this whole whirlwind of events, and it's just a crazy, adventurous, awesome story, and I highly recommend it if you're in the mood for like an adult fantasy. So I finally picked up the Grisha Trilogy. So you'll see this trilogy in some of my other TBR / wrap-up videos, but I finally finished it. I think I gave the first one a 4, the second one a 3, and the third one a 4. It's a lot of numbers together, but 4, 3, 4. As a whole, I'd give this series a solid 4. I'm not going to go into depth about why I like it, why I don't like it. I feel like... No, wait. I'm not going to go into depth for each book because it's too much. But as a whole, the series was really good. I really like her writing. I just like her as an author. I like the world she creates. And this is no exception. I think she did a great job with creating this world, creating characters that you enjoy and like to read. And I would definitely read more in this world and city. And basically, it seems like everything that she's coming out with is based around this world. But she created a good world, so why not? I really enjoyed it. That's all I'm going to say, because I feel like this series has just been talked about forever. So I picked up Broken Beautiful Hearts by Cami Garcia. If you don't know, this is one of the authors for the Beautiful Creatures series, which I didn't overly love that series. I do have a few of the books from that series, but I never finished it. This is a completely different spin on what she usually writes, from what I understand. I haven't read any of her standalones except this. But it is a contemporary YA novel about a young girl who gets abused by a boyfriend, voices what happened to her, and essentially isn't believed. And I feel like it was a refreshing story because she did stick to her guns. She didn't let things go and didn't say that it never happened because the guy was basically saying it didn't happen. So she was a very strong YA character, which I enjoyed, but not annoyingly so. She just told her story, stuck to her story, and I respected and enjoyed that about her. I forgot to mention, I gave this a 3 out of 5. I think that's a pretty fair rating for this book, and I'm going to keep it at that, because the story was okay. It had some just cute contemporary elements to it, but it had some heavy elements to it as well. But as a whole, is a 3 stars. Yeah. Then last, I read The Bells by Danielle Clayton. This book is so beloved by so many people, and I just did not like it. I feel like I am in a huge minority by saying I don't like this book. I gave it a 2 out of 5. There were definitely elements of the story that kept me interested enough to finish it, but the characters really didn't have developed personalities. I didn't really like any of the characters. I didn't really hate any of the characters. The story itself wasn't really developed, in my opinion. Like, not much happens in it that was overly crazy or interesting. There's a lot of flower talk, and there's one thing I learned from Wild Beauty, that book. I did not like that book either, is that I really don't like flower talk. It just bores the crap out of me. But I'm not even going to go into a synopsis for this because everyone seems to have read it already or heard about it because it's all over BookTube. I just personally didn't like it. Like I said, I gave it a 2 out of 5. I found it very boring. I found the characters boring, the plot boring, everything was boring. I found myself very bored throughout reading this. Let me know down below what you guys think. I feel like no one else feels this way about this book, but I'm just gonna be honest. So I'm currently reading 4 books. I don't know why I do this to myself because I can never just finish one book before I pick up another one. But I have been reading The Poppy War by R.F. Kuang for a long time. I'm on like page 150 or something like that. And I'm really liking this story. It's been on BookTube a lot lately. I started reading an ER copy of it couple of months ago, and I just haven't finished it for whatever reason. But it's a really, really good story about a young girl who doesn't live in very great financial situations, studies really hard to get into this school. It's just kind of her journey and adventure onto bettering herself. And it's just really well written. The world is great. The character development is great. I don't want to give too much away. So far, it's a really good adult fantasy novel. And I've only read 150 pages of it, but I could already recommend it to people because I'm really enjoying it. I can't imagine that anything would happen that I wouldn't enjoy. So I want to continue reading this and finish it soon. I'm also currently reading A Court of Frost and Starlight by Sarah J. Maas. This is kind of the fourth, I think they're calling it the 3.1 book in the Court of Thorns and Roses series. And this is by far my least favorite one so far. Like, it is really short. I don't even know how many pages. A couple hundred pages. I'm almost done. I'd probably say I have about an hour left to it. And it's just awkward, in my opinion. Like, so far, I haven't finished it yet. So I don't know how the ending is going to go. But so far, the characters don't seem as developed as they were in the series. Like, the regular series. Like, I don't feel like when the dialogue happens, I feel like that's that character talking. That's so weird. Like, it doesn't seem like that character to me. Also, none of her other books did the sexual stuff bother me. Like, people always complain about her sexual interactions and stuff like that. Never bothered me. This book, super awkward. Like, the sexual situations and just the sexual talk is just super awkward. And I'm just like, ew, like, let's get away from that. Like, don't talk about that. It's really weird. Those are two of the main issues I have with this right now. Also, nothing is happening. Like, nothing has happened in this book so far. Even if you give me like a mini little plot, mini story, all that's happening is the winter solstice or whatever, which is essentially Christmas for them. Boring. I don't really care that much. You could talk about winter solstice and this whole book could be summed into like a 25-page novella. I just feel like nothing has happened so far. I hope something crazy happens soon because it's getting kind of boring. That's what I think so far. Then we have the book club of the month books. So Kivox is actually joining me this month. He started reading this and I started reading this. Sufficiently Advanced Magic by Andrew Rowe. I'm really enjoying it so far. What about you? He's enjoying it too.
Good.
So I'm about 50 pages in right now, and it's like a 600-page book, so I have a lot to go. But I'm really enjoying it so far. I'm getting kind of like video game-esque vibes from it, which I've talked to him as well, and he's getting kind of the same vibes. It has a pretty... We don't know much about the magic system, at least I don't. But essentially, you start right off in the story as there's a tower, it has like 6 spires, and to gain magical abilities, or they call them attunements, or attunements, right? Mm-hmm. You have to go up the tower to a certain level and you can gain attunements. And then if you happen to go at the top of all 6 towers, you have the chance to meet the goddess herself and basically get a wish granted. They call them, I think, a boon. I can't remember. But it's a really fun, adventurous story so far, and interesting enough where I'm going to keep reading it. I don't want to give too much away besides that, but if you want to join the book club, you just have to read this book and watch the live stream. It's going to be June...
I'm going to say
24th, I thought. I could be completely wrong. June 24th, 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. That's a Sunday. We are also, for the book club, going to be reading The Broken Girls by Simone St. James. You don't have to read both books if you don't want to. If you want to join the live stream, just read one versus the other. That's fine too. But this one, I'm really bad at explaining this book. I've tried to explain it now like 3 times. I feel like once I read it, I'll have a better synopsis in my head. But essentially what I gather, there was this building in the 40s that was for kind of mentally disturbed people. Or troublemakers, and something happened in that building. Someone was murdered. Then now you're looking at it modern day. You have this woman who did lose someone in that building a long time ago, and she's I guess the mystery was kind of never solved. Who did it? Who, what, when, where, why? So I think she's a reporter and she goes back to that building to kind of investigate further. As far as I know, there's kind of like spooky, ghost-like elements to the story, and that's really what drew me to it, because other than that, it doesn't seem like my type of story. So I'm interested to kind of like break out of my shell, read something different. I think I got overwhelmed recently with like how bad some of the YA books are that I've been reading, so I kind of just wanted something completely new and fresh and different, and that's why we chose these two. This is like an adult fantasy. This is adult kind of mystery, I guess you would say. But yeah, I'm sorry that was such a long video. I promise in the future not to make my wrap-ups so long and not to wait, you know, like 5 months to do a wrap-up. Life has just been kind of crazy lately, but I'm going to try to make a better effort to get these done every month. Let me know down below if you guys agree with me on these books, if you disagree with me, if you read them, want to read them, what your thing is. It's perfectly okay to disagree with me. That's why there's so many different books on the planet, because we're all allowed to have our favorites and disagree with one another. But let me know down below what you guys think. Join us for the live stream if you'd like. Again, it's these two books right here, Sufficiently Advanced Magic and The Broken Girls. All you have to do is read them, join the live stream, talk about them. So stay tuned also, because I'm going to be fixing this bookshelf behind me. It does not have all my books on it yet, and they are in no sort of order. So I'm going to be fixing that and kind of filming it. I haven't done one of those videos yet, so don't mind it if it comes out really bad. And that's it. Thank you guys for watching. Don't forget to like the video if you liked it, subscribe if you liked it, and I will see you next time.